Hari Om. Generally, when we discuss the story of the Katha Upanishad, the focus is always on the young boy Nachiketas. However, today let's focus on his father, Gautama. Now, the general narration of the story is that Gautama was performing a sacrifice. Nachiketas, the young boy, approached the sacrificial hall and saw that all the cows that were meant to be given were weak and old. Realizing that this was not good, he goes to his father and says, "Unto whom do you give me?" He says that 3 times. The father gets offended and he says, "I give you to death." The child then goes to death and has a conversation with death about the self. This forms the gist of the Katha Upanishad. Now, the problem with the story is that if you analyze the Katha Upanishad, nowhere does it say that the father is a fraud, that his intentions are wrong. Because the very opening of the Upanishad clarifies that Gautama, the father of Nachiketas, gave away his everything. The very purpose of this sacrifice is to give everything away. This sacrifice is popularly known as Vishwajit. Vishwa means everything, Jit means to win. To win over everything, you have to give away everything. Say, for example, you call a place your house. You say you own this. This is your possession. Which means that there are many other places in the universe that you do not own, that is not yours. So, by having the sense of possession, we actually limit what we own. To a man who has sacrificed everything, everything is his own. So, to attain Vishwa Jaya, to conquer everything, to own everything, you have to give up, renounce your possession over everything. So, the renunciation of the possessiveness over things is the primary goal of this sacrifice, this yajna that Gautama is conducting. That being the case, why would he give only selected cows? So, the more appropriate interpretation of this situation would be that Gautama had sacrificed all his cows. He had given away to whoever needed it. He had given away his cows. And by the time Nachiketas approaches the sacrificial hall, all the good cows, the healthy cows, have been given away. Now he looks around and he notices that only weak and old ones are remaining. Now whenever you are deciding to give things away, in Vedic culture, the best should be given first. That is the concept. So obviously all the best had been given and the remaining ones are not in good condition to be given. So Nachiketas looks around and he thinks, well, what else remains in my father's possession that is worthy of being given, that is good? And he realizes that his father considers him to be his son. There is a sense of possessiveness towards his son. So for the completion of the sacrifice, even that possessiveness must be sacrificed, must be renounced. So realizing that, he goes to his father and he says, "Unto whom do you give me?" Now this question, this request, when his father hears it, he is appreciative of it. He understands it. But he does not want to take a decision simply on the excitement of his son. So he waits. The son repeats the request. He says, "To whom do you give me?" The father does not reply. The son repeats again. When he says for the 3rd time, the father thinks that he is determined. He has made up his mind. He understands why he needs to be renounced and he is ready for it. So it is at this point that the father says, "I give you to death." This is not an angry outburst. Generally, I think mostly in European translations, we see that it was an outburst. But in the original Sanskrit text, no such thing is mentioned. Gautama simply said, "I give you to death." So to assume that he was angry is unnecessary. Now when Nachiketa approaches Yama, and the way he discusses with Yama the concept of self-knowledge, we can see that Nachiketas is a well-trained boy. And such a training can only come from a genuinely realized self. So it is safe to assume that Gautama is a self-realized man. His act of sacrifice, his act of renunciation is a voluntary one. No one has forced him to do it. So the fact that he has decided to do it, and the fact that the Upanishad begins with the statement that he has already given up everything, it means that to say he was miserly or fraudulent in his action seems a bit out of place. So it would be more appropriate to say that Gautama gave away all the good cows in his possession. The remaining ones were not worthy of being given. The only thing remaining in his possession that he had a sense of mine towards it was Nachiketas. Nachiketas, realizing this, approaches his father and says, "Please tell me, to whom do you renounce me? To whom do you give me?" And making sure that the son understands his question, the son understands his proposal, the father waits, lets him say it for 3 times, which is considered as a sign of determination in the Vedic culture, and then allows him to go to death. This seems the more appropriate version of the story of Gautama, the father of Nachiketas. Now that we have discussed the sincerity of Gautama in performing the sacrifice, let us evaluate why he chose to give his son to death. When Gautama says, "my son," what is it that he is identifying with? And the answer is the body. It is the form of the son that Gautama calls "my son." And the body, as we all know, is mortal. Life is merely a tenant. Death is the original owner. Therefore, Gautama realizes that even if he does not renounce his child at this point, somewhere in the future, the child will be subject to the control of death. So eventually, being born, the child must die. He has this realization because he is a self-realized soul. He wants to teach that realization to his son. So this renunciation is more of a spiritual initiation. So Gautama says, "I give you to death." Because eventually this body will perish. You need to understand that, you need to acknowledge that, and you need to evaluate if there is something more to this life, to this existence than this body. This is the suggestion that Gautama is placing before his son, indirectly in the form of this command that "I give you to death." Hari Om.